And what is up, everybody? Okay, as many times as I'm going to mention about my position on professional wrestling, I don't necessarily support it, after finding out the real reason why Chris Benoit died. So, however, I do love Lucha Underground, okay? I love Lucha Underground and everything, but as far as like the two big names that were out there, is WWE, of course, which I refuse to support in any way, shape, or form, and of course TNA, which is I want to say lesser of the two evils, but almost just as guilty. Okay, but I find out that TNA is being canceled. So come September, no more TNA wrestling. I don't remember who they got as champion, but this guy finally became champion, and you know what? Good on him. Some guy finally became champion, but the best wrestler they had, and he was my second favorite wrestler. There was Chris Benoit, God rest him, hopefully, and then there was Samoa Joe. A very close second. That nobody matched that technique and ferocity, not to mention the ridiculous agility for somebody that big. It was like, whoa. It was like him able to fly all over the place the way he did. But why they put him in the X division? The X division is supposed to be like the light heavyweights and the cruiserweights, but for whatever reason, that's what they decided to do. Have him as an X Division champion. That's when he had his year and a half win streak. He was undefeated for a year and a half, and then to finally fight against Kurt Angle and lose for the first time. And granted, they did get a couple new wrestlers, but then even some of their older ones, they have him. After a while started losing left and right. When he finally wins the heavyweight title, because he deserves it. He absolutely deserved it. Shortly after losing it, he never won it again. Why? What the hell sense did that make? Kurt Angle, who wasn't with TNA as long as he was. Kurt Angle, who's been wrestling for a very long time, been famous for a very long time, should have enough money to the point where he doesn't necessarily need to be champion anymore. Is champion like how many more freaking times? And he was champion more times in TNA than he was in WWE. And he was TNA, and he was WWE champion. He was World Heavyweight champion. I believe he was also ECW Heavyweight champion at one point. For him to come in and win the TNA Heavyweight title. All right, fine. You're the first man to win every major title at the time. But when Samoa Joe loses it, he only had the belt one time. Bobby Roode had the belt more time. AJ Styles had the belt more times. Bobby Lashley was champion on more than one occasion, I believe. And then for him to be let go of TNA after winning the X Division title for however many times. The X Division title. Listen, I understand that he was more than capable of flying just as high as any of those guys that they had there. But the man weighed 280 pounds. He weighed 280 pounds. And if I remember correctly, didn't they have a cap off at one time for the X Division title? You're only allowed to weigh but so much. to compete in the X division, which would have kept Samoa Joe as a heavyweight, but for whatever reason, they kept giving him the freaking kept giving him the X division title. Then when he won the television title at the time, because they couldn't figure out the name, they couldn't keep the name for this one championship belt. It was originally the Legends title, then the Global title, then it was turned to the television title, and that belt was done away with. You know, he held the tag team titles on more than one occasion. The first time he held the tag team titles, he held it by himself. You know, along with the X division belts at the same time, and he, like I said, as far as just being a performer, he does all this great stuff in TNA, is let go, and then he pops up in WWE's Development League, NXT. What? Development League? Really? He hasn't developed himself enough yet? I'm pretty sure the man is almost 40. He started off as just a jobber in WWE. He was a lot skinnier. His hair was bleach blonde. Baggy t-shirt, baggy pants, and was getting his butt kicked by guys like S.A. Rios. Where's S.A. Rios now? Who the hell knows? Because, Samoa Joe, Ring of Honor champion multiple time, TNA, he was the TNA second Grand Slam champion, and he's coming into WWE's Development League. How stupid is that? The purpose for development leagues is so that you see somebody who has who obviously has a potential to do great. However, they need to hone their craft. They need to hone their craft a bit, and you want to keep them mainstream. You want to basically be able to keep your eyes on them. So you create a league for them to be able to play in, so that way you don't have to go looking for them. A lot of guys that Americans that want to play in the NBA. Rather than join the development league, they'll be like, "Oh, we'll play ball overseas." It's like, why would you do that? The NBA has a development league, Okay, this is the NBA. This is playing overseas. This is the development league. The development leagues are like, you gotta, at least you have a foot in the door. Now, seeing as how Samoa Joe has been wrestling for a long time, is a household name, everybody knows who he is, has action figures, had more than one action figure made of him. Why is he being put down in WWE's Development League? I absolutely will say this: Samoa Joe, I want to say, is doomed to failure in WWE. No ifs, ands, or buts, he is doomed to failure. When you have, because even with performers like Loki, right? He was Loki in WWE. Well, first he was Loki in TNA, and then I guess he went to WWE. He was Loki. He goes to TNA, then he's Senshi. And as Senshi, he was very, very dangerous. Then all of a sudden pops up in first season of NXT and wins NXT. Okay, Loki, okay, he used to fight in WWE. He was D'Lo Brown's tag team partner for a little while. They were called Lowdown, and this is what this is what they decided to do with a wrestler who should have been developed enough, who I don't understand. Like, okay, he was worthy enough to fight for you before. Why you got him starting from the bottom again? So comes back into WWE, only to go back to TNA, win the X Division title a bunch of times there, and TNA is about to die. Then you got Samoa Joe, who's back here, who's in NXT, guaranteed. The NXT title is the biggest title he's ever going to win for WWE. I'm not talking about like the United States title or the tag team champion, the tag team titles, which I find it interesting that now there's three, there's 3 tag team champions as opposed to just 2 like it used to be. I mean, considering Lucha Underground has 3, has the trios tag teams champions, and all of a sudden, you got 3 guys as tag team champions. Gee, like how original, and so so all of a sudden, I mean, because even for WWE even did the same thing when Samoa Joe was wreaking havoc through TNA. All of a sudden they bring Vince McMahon comes up with the idea to rename Rikishi's brother Umaga and make him go on this pure-blooded Samoan monster who's just going on this win streak. Like, gee, where the hell did they come up with that? Considering WWE was supposed to be the better brand of pro wrestling, why is it that they're ripping off of TNA's ideas? It's not like when it was at WCW and they used to make fun of WCW. That's one thing, but they were literally stealing basically the ideas of TNA. Why? Because TNA was a legitimate threat, and I think that's why Vince McMahon tells Hulk Hogan, is like, okay, do me a favor and go fix TNA for me, because even after Hulk Hogan left, I'm sorry, but the damage was done. It was bad. It was just bad, and for Samoa Joe to be in NXT now, that, like I said, most he's ever gonna get is the NXT championship. That's it. And NXT doesn't. They have tag team champion. They have Divas champion. Okay. They don't have a television or like intercontinental title for them. They don't. It's bad enough. WWE did away with the cruiserweight division. So. So no more X division, and NXT is basically what WWE's ECW was. They're developed, the not so popular guys were in ECW. They would have some have the popular guys come in to mix things up a bit. Prime example, CM Punk. Now, when CM Punk, who wrestled with Samoa Joe, came up in TNA, then comes to WWE. Okay, he's not necessarily that well known. TNA wasn't that big during the time that he was in, so okay, put him in ECW for a little while, establish himself in ECW. He becomes ECW heavyweight champion. This, that, the other. Obviously, he's a very prominent wrestler. So now, okay, switch him out between SmackDown and Raw. Win the WWE, win the heavyweight title, win the WWE title. This, that, the other, just back and forth. It made sense, it made sense to do that with him because nobody knew who he was. Everybody knows who Samoa Joe is. For you to put him in NXT and have him lose to a bunch of nobodies and then eventually bring him into WWE's main roster, have him fight on Raw, have him fight on SmackDown, have him fight in the pay-per-views. The fact that he is a better performer than anybody you have on that roster, but he will never be WWE Heavyweight Champion. It's not fair. It's not right. Like Vince McMahon has, he has an idea of what he feels like his champion should look like, and for him to deviate from that plan at any given point is because basically they've put enough time in. Chris Benoit was a long time reigning champion. Eddie Guerrero never necessarily got the title back. God rest the both of them, hopefully. But the reason why was because they were too short. They put their time in. They put their serious time in. They won like all these minor championships throughout WWE, and eventually did win the big titles, but only had it one time. Short title reigns, never won those titles again. Chris Benoit was supposed to have won the ECW belt, but ECW was, like I said, their development league, which is basically what NXT is right now. Another perfect example is Big Show. Big Show's won the title, a couple times, but how long were his title reigns? He's not necessarily going anywhere. But the Vince McMahon likes the tall guy, so obviously he's going to get it more than once. But then look at Mark Henry. 15 years in WWE, and he finally wins. The heavyweight title. And how long did he have that belt for? While this punk no-name, Daniel Bryan, who granted, he's one of the baby faces now, but he comes up out of nowhere, wins SmackDown's heavyweight title. But what happened to Mark Henry? Why? Because Mark Henry doesn't have what Vince McMahon's looking for. John Cena, on the other hand, John Cena's that tall enough, you're ridiculously jacked, shredded enough. Alberto Del Rio, now Alberto El Patron, almost the same way, but Alberto was Mexican. So I'm guessing that's supposedly that's the reason why he had left WWE. Granted, he had won both the WWE and World Heavyweight titles, but for whatever his reasons for leaving are their own. But then look at Chavo Guerrero. Chavo, the most he ever won was the ECW title. Again, the development league, and he was a multiple-time cruiserweight title, multiple-time tag team champion. I don't know if he ever won the USA, if he ever won the United States or the Intercontinental title, but him being, they gave him all that, because he put his time in and everything like that, and he's a great performer, but he's short. He was shorter than Eddie. He was shorter than Chris Benoit, who was like, what, 5'7", 5'3"? It's ridiculous. So, for Chavo, obviously, Brock Lesnar. I mean, look at Brock Lesnar. Ridiculously tall, jacked all to hell. Look at Ryback. Look at Batista. Randy Orton. All these guys, the perfect build. They're just the right size. This, that, the other. Good look, ridiculously good looking guys. Are they great performers? But how many times have they won WWE's championship. Now this idiot Seth Rollins. I say that because I only say that because he's a heel, and supposedly the way he won the way he won the title from Brock Lesnar, was like, he's a coward because that's how they wrote him as, and didn't it made absolutely no sense. Christian, as long as he was with WWE, when he he never won a title, he never won a championship until after he came back from TNA, having won the NWA title on more than one occasion, and then coming back into WWE, I think he won the ECW title as well as the World Heavyweight title. But again, ECW was their development league, so their title didn't necessarily count, especially with how easy they discarded ECW as opposed to trying to better develop their new development league. Instead, they only cut it to an hour. It was pre-recorded. It was in it was a much smaller venue, and then first opportunity they got, scrapped it, and turns into this NXT nonsense, which I don't even know where the hell you could watch a single episode of this. And then again, whoever their new champion is, it's okay to have him as the champion there due to the fact that this is WWE development league. But to be perfectly honest, it doesn't even look like they care. It doesn't. It's like the performers that they got there, no idea where the hell these people came from. It's like WWE's trying to capitalize on the indie circuit as well. It's bad enough they're the only real mainstream show in town. Pretty much beat out all their other competitors, with the exception of Lucha Underground, because Lucha Underground is its own thing. Since it's owned by the El Rey Network, since it's pre-recorded and everything shot in the same location, as opposed to having to book house show after house show after house show after house show. It's ridiculous. Like I said, it's shot in the same location every time, so that's just less of a headache for them to have to pay, to the guys to be flying, all over the place. Fighters get the wrestlers get the opportunity to rest up the way they should. And if Samoa Joe would have gone to Lucha Underground, I almost guarantee he'd be, he would be a prime candidate for a title contention. However, him in NXT, I hope he wins that belt. Which would just something else to add to his his TNA titles and his Ring of Honor titles. And I just hope he I hope he wins that belt quick, and I hope gets to go mainstream so he can start making a bit more money. But like I said, what happened to Chris Benoit could just as easily happen to anybody else. If this was Lucha Underground, wouldn't be as likely that it would happen, because not everybody has to fight the same show. If they brought back the jobbers, the guys that just get paid to get beat up to make the other wrestler look good. It's back to what professional wrestling used to be, what professional wrestling needs to be. But Samoa Joe, I'm talking I'm talking directly to you, man. I wish you the best of luck, but I don't think you're going to do too well. I'm done talking. You have a good night.